So I keep talking about angles versus rounds, and essentially that's my shorthand way of looking at the different things that create balance in a wine. You know, people talk about balance all the time, but how do you describe what balance is? And to me, balance is two things that are in equivalent amounts. And what I see in wines is there's angular things and round things. If the wine is in balance, the angles are in balance with the rounds for the wine type. What is the angles? The angles are acidity and tannins in the shortest, most simple way. The round things are the body type things in wines, glycerol, sugar if you have it. Those are the things that kind of oppose each other. You have, at the extremes, you have a wine with very low acidity. See, let's take Cabernet for example. Typically, it's going to have lower acidity and higher tannin. We probably selected that for that reason. So you get your structural angle things in the Cabernet from tannin more so than the acidity. On the round side, you've got essentially with Cabernet wines, I'll take that as an example. The wine should be dry, so there should be no sugar there, but you're getting it from the glycerol, the body type things. People tend to focus on alcohol as the round thing, but I think it's actually the glycerol that's more important. The glycerol is formed during fermentation at a proportionate level as to the alcohol level, and that's kind of in proportion to the sugar level initially in the grapes. So you've got your angles and your rounds. Cabernet getting its angles from the tannin less so than the acidity, and the rounds from the glycerol / alcohol level. Take a white wine, Muscadet as an example. You have low tannin, you have high acidity in these grapes. That's fine, you're getting your angles from the acidity and not from tannin. The rounds again are from the glycerol. Because you don't have huge amounts of acidity, you have beautiful amounts of acidity. You don't necessarily need a lot of glycerol for that. We'll go back to the Cabernet example. You have a lot of tannin in this. You need a little more glycerol to balance those angles in the wine. So therefore, the alcohol levels of the Cabernet wine to be in balance need to be a little higher. It's easy to measure alcohol. It's kind of a marker of the amount of glycerol. Whereas with Muscadet, you have a need for less of the rounds because you have less severe angles involved to get a balance there. I'm not sure I did a good job of that, but you kind of see where I'm going. Probably the fifth take we could get that. So then, how do you work on adjusting your angles, if you will, as a winemaker? Well, it's how you maybe extract. Maybe it's when you pick your harvest date, because the angular things, and well, let's pick on Cabernet here. The angular things are going to change with time. They're essentially, as the grape ripens, there's going to be less angles there. The tannins will be softer. And at the same time, the acidity will be dropping. So your angles tend to soften with time. And on the round side of things with Cabernet, the sugar levels increase. Sugar / glycerol ultimately in the wine. So with underripe Cabernet grapes, your angles are huge and your rounds are very small. And then as the grapes ripen, the balance shifts a little bit. And then you've got what, for a given wine style, you have your balance area. And then as you leave the grapes on the vines longer than you would desire, it shifts more toward the rounds and less toward the angles. So I think given a site and a type of a plant, underripe grapes are skewed toward too many angles. Overripes, it's skewed toward the rounds. So that's kind of my sense of balance on this thing. So to adjusting the things, you could change your tannin levels, pick your harvest date. You could add acidity to get a little bit of your angle back. If you have the flavors in the zone you want and you've got your angles appropriately balanced within themselves, the acidity and tannin, you like where that is and you feel that you need more round, there's another tool that is used in many parts of the world called chaptalization. And essentially you're adding a little more sugar from an external source to raise up the round side to kind of meet the angles. Because of maybe the lack of heat and ripening time, you may not, the viticulturist and winemaker may not have time for those angles to soften on the vine. So you're obliged to harvest before too many rains and decay. You harvest those grapes because it'll make the best wine possible, but it's a little skinny. It needs a little more fat to it. So by chapitalizing, you can actually bring up the glycerol and alcohol levels to a level that will somewhat match the angles in the wine. And I think that's something that our European brothers and sisters have used with great utility and I think finesse over many, many years.